take a dominant role in the Horn of Africa. And the second element is that there was this bringing in of the Somalis, with President Farmajo coming to Eritrea in, I think it was 2018, then a formal agreement 2020. And so that you've got three leaders, of whom Farmajo was obviously the junior one, who came together, and the Somali troops arrived in Eritrea, 5,000-10,000, we're not quite sure, prior to the outbreak of war. And they were supposed to be going to Amman. They never went there. They were, to the UAE, and they never went there. They were trained, and they were put into the front line, and many of them died, and many of them behaved terribly badly in the conflict that broke out. So there was a clear plan before the conflict breaks out on the night of the 3rd and the 4th of November that Miriam has talked about. And that is what the background to all of this is, and how we see this as playing out. The one thing I think we have to also, just if I may, if you'll just indulge me, the one thing one has to remember about Isaias is that he has no real interest in development. And this is a completely strange situation for a head of state. He has a huge interest in control and power, but he has no interest in development. I mean, he was asked, I think a year ago, what about the Eritrean economy? He said, what economy? We have no economy. It's nothing, absolutely nothing. But he really doesn't care. And, in the end, if you want to understand the complete indifference that he has to it, you should go back to the great quote from George Orwell in 1984, which some of you may have read, when the victim in all of this says, why are you doing this? What is the final aim? And the quote that the oppressor comes up with is this. It is, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on the face of humanity forever. And that, in a funny kind of way, is the best way of understanding President Isaias, someone with utter no scruples of any kind, prepared to go to any lengths to maintain his control and extend the control that he has over the region.
So back to you, Professor Trombull, on the two questions that we raised.
Yes, I think it is important to mention the precursor history before Isaias entered the game, so to say, with the war on Tigray. Because the war on Tigray was in the making long time before 2018, from the Ethiopian perspective. Already in 2015, we know that the Amhara regional state blocked the main thoroughfares, the main roads into Tigray from Amhara. The Addis-Mekele route and also from Gondar was blocked, diverting then all traffic through the Afar route. And you had an increasing hostility within EPRDF component parties against TPLF. I've just published a lengthy article analyzing the so to say, the decline and breakup of EPRDF, where we have clear evidence for that the conflict was in the making from 2014-2015, for sure. What made it more prominent, obviously, was the Eritrea of this peace rapprochement, where Isaias Afwerki's role were compatible or overlapping with interest articulated by certain segments of the Ethiopian political elite, particularly some segments of the Amhara political elite, but also Oromo. And although, at least from my perspective, I cannot say that Abiy Ahmed entered into the peace agreement with the clear objective to go to war against TPLF. Not at that time, in June 2018. I didn't think that happened. But very soon thereafter, Abiy Ahmed saw the overlapping objectives, so to say, with Isaias to marginalize, or to use Isaias also to help him marginalize TPLF from the political arena of Ethiopia. So I don't think we should we should leave Abiy Ahmed out of that equation, that this is all about Isaias's agency. I think it goes hand in hand. Yes, the more shrewd role of planning and plotting certainly belongs to Isaias, but we have to keep in mind that the EPRDF minus TPLF, and later converting into Prosperity Party, had very clear objectives to take out TPLF as a relevant political actor in Ethiopia, and hence it was joining forces, so to say, with a common objective to neutralize TPLF as a political force. I can see that this has the push for Isaias and the objectives we have today, both military and political objectives today, after 2 years of war, might be a bit different between Asmara and Addis. It is a tactical relationship, maybe not a strategic relationship, but they are equally involved in the war of Tigray. May I add, Merkeb and Mesa, just one thing, because I don't know how you phrased this in the opening of this seminar. I really think we need to distinguish between Isaias and his cronies, his mafia group, so to say, and the Eritrean people. Very much so, in terms of how they are relating to Ethiopia and Tigray. This is not to excuse the individual perpetration of war crimes in Tigray by Eritrean soldiers, but we also have to keep in mind that the Eritrean population for at least the last 20 years since the crackdown has been thoroughly brainwashed and has been thoroughly manipulated into believing that Tigray is the main cause for all their misery. And we know that the Eritrean population at a collective level is severely traumatized by the devastating human rights abuses which have occurred in Eritrea for 20-30 years. And they have been dehumanized because they have seen their own brothers and sisters being tortured and killed by their own, and as such have been stunted, so to say, in how to relate to enemy forces also, and the neighboring Tigrayan people. I'm not excusing, but I'm trying to explain the situation also from the Eritrean side and the Eritrean troops being forced into carry out this war. And we should keep that in mind too.
Over to you at the final remark, Professor Tromboul.
Yes, thank you. So let's then hypothetically say that the talks in South Africa will reach an agreement on cessation of hostilities, and Addis Ababa asks Asmara to pull back the troops from Tigray. Do you think that will happen? Most likely not. You know, even up until today, Ethiopian government hasn't fully publicly recognized that Eritrea is part of the war, so to say, fighting inside Tigray. And they were in denial for a long time, even though everyone knew it. So if Isaias hesitates to pull back troops, even if Abiy tells him to do so, Ethiopia then has to reclassify Eritrea from an ally into an enemy. and they have to notify UN that Eritrea is a belligerent party to Ethiopia. And hence the conflict will be reclassified as an international armed conflict, which then will increase very much the responsibility, so to say, of the UN Security Council also to take action. Because so far, the conflict is not classified as an international armed conflict. Do you foresee that if Abiy says that Eritrea, Isaias, is the enemy of Ethiopia, that is to give the trump card to Mekele? And it will change and alter the power dynamics in Ethiopia fundamentally. Because if Eritrea is an enemy of Ethiopia, well then ENDF has to fight Eritrea, not Tigray. I seriously doubt that scenario will happen. So if you do reach a cessation of hostilities agreement in South Africa, I doubt it, but if you do, and Abiy Ahmed will tell Isaias to pull back troops, he will not. Yes, he might pull back from possibly Aksum, possibly even Shire, but he will still be on Tigrayan soil, so to say, on Ethiopian soil, as we have seen over the last 2 years. So it will still be an uncleared situation in this regard. And it's very little Ethiopia can manage to do about that, other than to make Eritrea an enemy, which will then indicate a possible re-altering of power relations in Ethiopia, and that will not be in favor of the Prosperity Party and Abiy Ahmed. I sincerely wish I'm wrong in my interpretations here. I sincerely wish that they will reach a cessation of hostilities, which will go into a ceasefire, which will merge into peace talks later on. But as Merkabi, you know, I'm a realist, and in this regard, that means to be a pessimist. So the international community needs to prepare for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is a continued genocide on the Tigrayan people. And what should the international community do about that now? Not wait until later. We need to act now. And there, on that issue, I don't see EU, I don't see US acting at the level they should be. We know, for instance, that the US State Department have a legal brief to classify what's happening as a genocide, but they don't want to release it. And they have held back that for several months in hope to facilitate a peace process. I think this, as Miriam says, what's happening in South Africa now is possibly the final attempt. And if it breaks down in South Africa, the talks, it will take a long time before that might resume, so to say. Then it is a full concentration on battlefield victory. And then also the international community needs to rethink the overall relationship with Ethiopia, not only with Eritrea, but with Ethiopia, how to sanction Ethiopia, how to put weapons embargo on Ethiopia and Eritrea, how to possibly help the Tigrayan people to defend themselves from a genocide in terms of humanitarian, but also possibly other resources to defend themselves. Not that we are taking the fight for them, but look how we are helping Ukraine with everything they need in their war against the Russian invading troops. We should start to think alternative scenarios now in case the talks will fail.